Something really profound is happening in our workplaces right now. And it's not just about where we work anymore, but about how we feel when we're there. We are right in the middle of a massive reshuffle, and it's putting our mental health and well being front and center. So let's dig in and break down what's really going on and what it all means for the future of work. To really wrap our heads around the scale of this, let's just start with one number from the World Health Organization. Even back in 2019, before everything got turned upside down, a full 15% of all working age adults had a mental disorder. And look, that is not some small fraction we can just ignore. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people. The crisis is here, it's undeniable. So in this explainer, we're going to look at what's actually driving this and, more importantly, what the path forward looks like. And the cost? It isn't just personal, it is absolutely economic. The WHO estimates that depression and anxiety cost the global economy 1 trillion, that's with a T, 1 trillion US dollars every single year in lost productivity. So this is not some soft HR issue, it's a hard economic reality. It's a trillion-dollar problem that is demanding a solution. So, what's really behind this silent epidemic? What are the specific pressures in our day to day work lives that are driving so much of this stress and anxiety? Let's take a closer look. Well, a recent survey across 6 different countries really paints a clear picture for us. Stress is leading the pack at a huge 44%, followed pretty closely by anxiety. Now, what's really interesting here is how all of these are connected, right? Stress and anxiety can lead to sleep problems, which then just fuels burnout and depression. It's a pretty vicious cycle. The World Health Organization actually gives these stressors a formal name: psychosocial risks. And this isn't about physical hazards like a slippery floor. We're talking about things like massive workloads, having zero control over your own job, unclear roles, or just a plain old toxic culture. These are kind of the invisible dangers of the modern workplace. And this quote right here, it highlights one of the biggest risks of all: leadership. Research from Walden University it's unequivocal. Toxic leadership isn't just unpleasant. It directly causes psychological distress. Poor management is a major driver of this whole crisis. The key takeaway is that the tone is absolutely set from the top. Okay, now let's pivot a little and talk about one of the biggest workplace experiments in history, that massive sudden shift to remote work. And while it definitely brought a lot of flexibility, it also came with some serious and often unintended consequences for how we connect to our jobs. And this brings us to a really central question. When we all stopped going into the office, did our connection, our sense of loyalty to our employers, actually change? A pretty fascinating study from Ericsson gives us some powerful clues. Okay, let's break this chart down, because it is really telling. On the left, you've got retention probability, basically the chances an employee is still with the company over time. The blue line represents people hired before the pandemic. But look at that green line. Those are the folks who are onboarded completely remotely. See how much faster and steeper that line drops? It's just a crystal clear visual of a much higher resignation rate. That sense of disconnection wasn't just a feeling, it had a measurable, real-world impact on people leaving their jobs. Now, this chart pinpoints when that risk of leaving was highest. A hazard ratio sounds complicated, but it's really just a way of comparing risk between groups. A ratio of 1.0 means the risk is the same. But just look at that middle bar for pandemic hires. The risk of leaving between 6 months and 3 years on the job was almost double that of other employees. This was the critical window. Without those early in-person connections, that sense of belonging just never fully developed, and people were way more likely to walk away. So, facing all these challenges, a totally new model for the workplace is starting to emerge. The problems we've been talking about have forced this fundamental reevaluation, and it's sparking a huge shift towards a more human-centered culture. And to understand just how radical this shift is, you just have to look at the history. I mean, we went from the super strict hierarchies of the 50s to the loyalty-killing cubicle farms of the 90s. Even the fun perks of the 2000s tech boom often just covered up the fact that people were working longer hours. The 2020s are a genuine departure, a real pivot to what actually makes people thrive at work. This cultural shift was kicked into high gear by what's been called the Great Resignation, or maybe more accurately, the Great Reshuffle. Millions of people took a step back, reevaluated their priorities, and it forced employers to stop and ask, wait a minute, what do our people actually need from us? And the answers are starting to come together around 3 new cornerstones. It's not about the ping pong tables anymore. It's about fundamental human needs: flexibility, which gives people autonomy, belonging, which creates psychological safety, and a genuine investment in well-being, which acknowledges that people are way more than just their output. These are the new table stakes. Okay, so we understand the problem, and we see the cultural shift that it's causing. But what does this actually look like in practice? Let's talk about the specific, actionable steps that companies can take to build a healthier future of work for everyone. It really starts here. First, organizations have to use data to find and fix those psychosocial risks we talked about, get to the root causes of the stress. Second, they need to actually reward managers who build teams that are both high-performing and have high well-being. And third, they must create a culture of psychological safety where employees actually feel like they can speak up without fear. And for anyone out there who still thinks this is all just about soft skills, the data tells a completely different story. Companies that offer comprehensive mental health benefits report stronger outcomes all across the board, in productivity, in employee engagement, and in a positive return on their investment. It's proof that doing the right thing for your people is also the smartest thing for your business. And this quote from a leader at Starbucks just sums it all up perfectly. It's a simple but really powerful formula. You invest in your people, and they will deliver for the business. It's a virtuous cycle that ends up benefiting everyone involved. So as we've seen, the world of work has fundamentally changed. The old models are breaking down under the weight of all this stress and disconnection. The new expectation is for a workplace that is flexible, inclusive, and genuinely cares for its people's well-being. And the data is clear that this isn't a cost, it's an investment. Which leaves us with one final crucial question to think about. The workplace is evolving. Is yours keeping up?